Welcome to Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show. This is Dennis Reno, and you're listening to my favorite horse podcast, Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show.
Today I'd like to welcome Melinda Folse. And Melinda is an author. Welcome, Melinda, to Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Now, you have written other books, and the book that I'm interested in today is Riding Through Thick and Thin. That's your latest book. But tell us a little bit about your previous book.
Well, the book just previous to this one was called The Smart Woman's Guide to Midlife Horses. Mm-hmm. And it's about women in, anywhere from their 30s, usually when their kids are grown and they either grew up riding horses or always wanting a horse, and suddenly that window opens for them and they go get this horse, and then they have quite a challenge on their hands sometimes, just figuring out, how to incorporate a horse into your life. And even those who have gotten away from horses, things have really changed, and there's a lot of new things to know, and it's just it's a great big world. So,
and also if women did ride in their youth, the type of horse is very different when they come back to it, because again, it's just a different kettle of fish.
Well, it is, and the tack is different, and the main thing that's different in the middle-aged rider, and we laugh about what is that, because I have 70-year-olds who can still consider themselves middle-aged. So that's a big window, but is, our center of gravity has changed. Our balance is different. Our bodies are different. And so even when you used to, when you were a kid and you go jump on the back of a horse and run galloping across the pasture bareback and don't give it a second thought, when you're older, you are more cautious, you know what can happen, and you maybe not bounce as well as you used to. And there's just a lot more fear involved. And it is a very different experience, and a good one, but there's a lot more to know on that side of it. So
now, what did you cover in that book?
Boy, just about everything. It started, what the funny story behind this book is I had this horse. This was me. I mean, I got these horses or a horse, and he was just a handful, and he was so much fun to ride, and I had so much fun with him at first, and then he started to kind of act up. So I started to, try to figure out, well, what's wrong? Is it saddle fit? Is it this? Is it that? And being a writer and a researcher, I would just dig and find people and talk and read articles and all kinds of stuff. So this horse literally kind of caused this book, because all the things that I learned in trying to work with him and to get this whole new experience in my life and be safe and happy and have fun was, that was the journey that I was on. And I just thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to be able to do something with all this information and maybe help other people who are struggling like I am. And another funny thing that happened is the book just prior to that, I worked for Clinton Anderson, and I helped him with his book, his second book called Lessons Well Learned. And he has a lot of really good tips and tricks for breaking things down and learning things that were kind of intimidating, lead changes and stuff like that. I was really afraid to tackle anything like that. So when I was working with him on that book, I did travel with them a little bit and noticed that just about everybody in his audiences were just like me. I mean, a lot of women my age and older who, were out there trying to do better with their horses. And it just was so inspiring to me that this baby boomer population is so wholeheartedly embracing horses and horsemanship at this point in their lives. And so anyway, that all kind of came together, and I pitched the idea to the publisher who also published Trafalgar Square Books, that also published Clinton's book, both of them, and they loved the idea, and we just took off with it. So it literally covers everything from horse nutrition to finding the right vet to getting yourself in shape to ride to things you can do with your horse, and even things you can do with horses if you don't ride, because there's a lot that we can learn from horses and enjoy about horses even if you don't ride. So
I think that's great. I've found that many of the people that listen to the podcast are baby boomers, and actually It's very encouraging. I think, though, that the most important thing is to make sure that everybody is safe and to make sure that they are on the right horse for them at this point in their life. I came across a woman who was riding at 93, and there was a video on Schlee's saddles, and I thought, my gosh, and it was just after I had a heart attack, and I was coming back into riding. Well, I always rode, but I wasn't sure anymore. And that's, I was thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to get the best saddle I can buy and all of this stuff. And I had my own horse, of course. And when I saw her, I thought, man, I can do it if she can do it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the kind of the crux of this book was the aging issues and riding. But I remember the funniest story I have about that is I was speaking at a symposium here in Fort Worth and taking some questions at the end. And this lady stood up and she says, well, I've got a midlife horse story for you. I'm 72 years old and I still consider myself middle-aged. And I had ridden Morgans my whole life. And, Morgans are pretty hot. And she says, I love that. I love that temperament and I love those horses. But when I got to be 65, I decided, well, I'm too old to ride Morgans anymore. And she liked riding young horses. And she said, I got rid of all my Morgans and got me a nice, safe, steady quarter horse. She said, I got bucked off that quarter horse so many times and broke 2 or 3 things. And so I sold that quarter horse and went back to what I love to ride. And today I've got 3 young Morgans and I just ride them all the time.
Good for her.
I don't think I would recommend that for everybody, but it just cracked me up that, she thought she was doing something that was safer, but it was actually more dangerous for her because it wasn't what she was used to. And that wasn't what, brought her the most joy. So.
Right. Now, what is the most common complaint that you hear from the boomer group physically?
Oh, physically, our bodies are different and it's balance issues and feeling, just a little bit of fear in the saddle, not feeling real stable and secure in the saddle. I think that's a lot of it. And just fear.
Yeah, because there's lots of there are a lot of people working with that, the psychological fear and horses. There are a lot of people out there doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of people buy, they buy the wrong horse. They fall in love with a horse that's a little too much for them when they're first coming back, and that's hard, and that is in the book about shopping for your first horse and how to kind of avoid that pitfall, but it happens. It happened to me, and then next thing you know, you're in it, and you've got to figure out what to do, and if you, there's still, you can generally work around it. It does depend on the horse, but it just takes a different tack a little bit. But I think fear is probably the biggest.
And how many people are complaining about their knees?
Knees, yeah, that's a big one. And I kind of got in this most recent book with the body image issues. There again, it was riding biodynamics and balance and stability in the saddle. And one of my favorite sources in this book was Wendy Murdoch. Are you familiar with her?
No.
Well, Wendy has a billion little, she calls them 50 fast fixes, and there's for jumpers and but all these little riding, but as your foot position in the stirrup and how you hold, how you distribute your weight. And she just has a lot of little great tips that she was willing to share with us about, to get that really stable, secure seat and to take the pressure off your knees. She was talking about the amount of pressure you put on your knees when you're bracing in the stirrups, because a lot of people try to balance by bracing and that just kills your knees. And so there's a lot of little cool tricks around that, but yeah, knees can be a big issue.
Now, did you include them in your book? Right?
Yes.
Oh, great. Super.
Not the midlife horses. I got more into that with the next book, Riding Through Thick and Thin.
Okay, so let's talk about that book. Now, first of all, how did you get into writing? What brought you into this art?
I graduated. I've always loved to read and to write, and I got an English degree at Texas Tech University, and they had a brand new thing. It was called a writing and editing track, where you could major in different kinds of writing and editing, and you put together different studies. And I really loved that the best. And I got out of school and I worked in PR communications, but I still just wanted to write. And I began writing articles in-house in trade magazines and that sort of thing, and just kind of worked my way up to I was telling someone the other day, they said, well, what made you think you could write a book? And I said, well, I didn't think I could write a book. I was an article writer. And then this one guy really wanted me to write his book with him. And I said, I don't know how to write books. And he said, well, can you write 12 articles about me, maybe in chronological order? So I said, well, okay, I can try that. And I did. And it wasn't scary. And I really found that I liked working in that length, because you could really, explore a topic and develop it, and much more than you could in a magazine article. So I sort of shifted gears, and that's kind of how it happened.
And it's all about perspective, isn't it?
It really is.
Right.
It really is.
Which is sort of your underlying theme, I think.
Yes. And just persistence, and it's kind of being authentic with what you want to do and why you want to do it, and both books are that way. It's like, embrace who you are and where you are, and ride anyway. Do the best you can with what you've got, and then keep getting better. Find ways to keep getting better, and so that's kind of what I've done as a writer, and also what I've done as a rider.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, every time I talk to authors, the difficulty is often the distinguishing between writer and rider.
Yes.
So tell us about Riding Through Thick and Thin.
Well, it was funny. The publisher, after Midlife Horses was doing really well, and they came back to me, I guess 2 or 3 years later, and said, we've been thinking about this issue of body image and mindfulness, and what people who, there are a lot of writers, larger writers out there, and we don't want the book to say that, we don't really want a diet and exercise book. We want a book about being smart, about how you ride and how you take care of your horse. And if you're, if you are a heavier rider, there are things you need to know. And, we don't want to say you have to lose weight. We just want to say everybody needs to do these things to ride the best they can. And what hooked me on this idea is, there's these pressure sensitive pads that measure the amount of pressure you're putting on a horse's back. And they cited a couple of studies that, a 120-pound floppy rider that doesn't ride with good balance and form and all that puts more pressure on a horse's back than a 250-pound rider that rides correctly. So that's, I thought, that's interesting how you can ride lighter. You can feel lighter to the horse, even if you're not lighter. And, and all that goes to say, to get yourself to do that, you've got to be in really good shape. And to do that, you've got to feed your own body as well as you feed your horses. And so, it's like it all kind of works together. And the next thing you know, you're at a really healthy weight and you're riding well and you're having a good time. And so that's what I hope for everybody. We just it's so much fun to have horses, and you don't want to waste any of that time worrying about, dumb stuff like how I look in my riding clothes or, that sort of thing. But you want to do the best you can for yourself and for your horse. Now,
approaching that, if a rider is heavier and they want to get back into riding, or they have their horse, etc., what do you recommend for them to do? To do a lot of groundwork, or what is the course?
Well, it's it's a lot about getting fit and strong enough to ride well, mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do, in the book I talk about I think I call it the Holy Trinity of fitness, but it's the core work, is like Pilates and that sort of thing. It really helps keep you, you can lift your own body. If you help, that helps with the lift when you're riding, when your core is strong, and you have to be flexible and you have to be strong. So you've got to balance a conditioning program. And what I emphasize to everybody is, nobody has time to be in the gym all the time, especially, a lot of crossover in this audience, and a lot of us are, mm-hmm. Working full time and have families or whatever. So, it's how to find ways to sneak fitness activities in with your horse time, in with your daily activities. So you've got the strength, the stamina, and the flexibility to ride well. Mm-hmm. that's the bigger issue really than actual weight, within reason. But, so that's the main thing, is to just be able to get yourself strong and fit enough that you can do a good job and take care of the horse too.
Right. And when, women think about the fact that there are a number of men that ride, especially in the Western riding, that are big men.
Yeah, the bulldoggers are huge guys, and they ride these little cutting horses.
Right. So, there's no reason that, a heavier woman can't ride a horse.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the people that I talked to early on, and she was actually fairly discouraging. She says, I hope you're not going to go, tell people to just go jump on a horse if they need to lose weight and to, use that horse to lose weight or what. It was such a misconception about what this book was about. And so it was like, that was kind of my benchmark all the way through. It's like, no, I'm not encouraging people to just go jump on a horse. I'm telling them to be smart about it. Pick the right horse. That just like the midlife horse, if you need a weight bearing horse, and I have 2 or 3 experts in the book that tell you what kinds of horses and what kinds of physical traits in those horses to look for when you're choosing a horse. If you're, and there's all the rule of thumb, of what percentage of the horse's weight the rider and tack can't be more than, and that is a rule of thumb, and there's exceptions, but people get hung up in that, and I think it's really more about the condition of the horse, the way the horse is built, and the condition of the rider. And when you get those 3 things lining up well, then, you're okay.
Mm-hmm. And also, there's lots of sort of exciting or intriguing, I would say, not exciting, intriguing things that you can do with your horse on the ground. And it's good for the horse, and it's good for the rider, because the rider is leading them around, and there's that actual activity there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's true. And when I don't have time to ride and I get out there and do groundwork and, run around with the horses and play with them on the ground and do a lot of the different things, especially some of the things I learned when I was working with Clinton, I wear a little Fitbit watch and, I get lots of steps just doing groundwork. And it's funny. So I'm thinking, okay, I can check that off for my stamina work today. And, it's fun to ride, but it's also fun to connect with a horse in other ways. A lot of people are really enjoying the liberty work on the ground and driving, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of options.
Right. And that's my husband's always saying, well, you have to ride. And I'm thinking, no, if you haven't been riding, that's the last thing you want to do is get on, get back into, basically it's like a dog, working a dog, obedience training or just connecting, because that's what horses want, is they want that connection.
That's absolutely right. And, another friend that she's in a wheelchair, and that's all she can do. Well, she does do some of the therapeutic riding now. She's able to get on a horse, but, she loves doing groundwork from that wheelchair. She says, when you're on the back of a horse, you can't look into his eyes. And I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
I like to see their face. I like to, I like to connect with them
that
way. So
right.
It's pretty.
Yeah, I know. I think that there's just some people that think that, and my husband included, that if you're not riding, you're not with the horse. And I'm thinking, oh no. I think one of the most fun and most beautiful experiences we both had was taking our horses camping, and and just having them on the high line and communicating. They were always communicating with us in the camp,
Yes.
And that's a good thing, because when you're out on the trail, you never know what's going to happen. And if that bond that you build in the camp really translates back into the trail. So, yeah.
It does. It really does. That's one of my favorite memories. We have a great big, it's called LBJ Grasslands here, and it's like 35,000 acres in kind of north central Texas. And they had just the most beautiful trails and camp areas. And, that one morning we went with a bunch of people, and I woke up first, and I looked out of the tent, and both of my horses were just looking at me. And, it was a great way to wake up, I tell you.
Yeah, because you're living with them.
Uh-huh.
That's so awesome. So now what are your future plans for writing here?
Well, I really don't know. I'm really having a lot of fun with this book, and I'm involved in some blogging opportunities, and it's just going to be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see where this goes. I've been blogging for EquiSearch for a while, and it's called Life with Horses, I think is the name of the blog. And then there are a couple others that had invited me to contribute, so I'll be doing a lot more of that. So for the short term, I'm going to be just working with this material because there's so much of it, and that was the biggest challenge with this book is there's just so much on this topic because we got into the mindfulness and
Mm-hmm.
breathing and a little bit of meditation, which kind of seems silly to some people unless they've tried it, and then they realize how when you can get yourself that quiet and you teach yourself to do that when you're riding, it makes such a difference to the horse.
That's right.
I can feel my horse when I can put myself into a really quiet place on my insides. I can feel my horse relax, and so those are so we get into a lot of interesting things like that besides the biodynamics and the balance and the all that stuff. So I think there's so many areas to work a little more on that I'm hoping I get to explore some of those, and then we'll just see.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think also that you're doing a wonderful service for women, getting them to recognize their positive gifts and traits about their body. And it's just been such a battle, I think, over the last, I don't know, decades and decades. Well, I guess from the beginning of time when women realized that, they're about their appearance. And I think Dove, thank goodness for Dove,
Yes.
because they've really kicked it off in the media. And you have a wonderful video on your website that it's quite profound. And I think everybody should have a look at it.
Yeah, the way we see ourselves is it can be so different than reality. And, some of the people I talk to, were very, very concerned about their weight. And, I look at them and I think, wow, really? But it's real, and we laugh, but it's real.
Yeah.
And either way, whether they think they're larger than they are, they think they're smaller than they are, it's just your mind can play such a powerful role in what you're doing, and you've got to be able to kind of work with that rather than against it. And I think that's the trick for some of this stuff.
That's right. And the mindfulness and horses go together beautifully because horses can read you, and I think they're that's why they're used in therapy so often, and thank goodness for that. And there's so much to learn, but it's a long journey, and many of us are at the end of the journey, and unfortunately spent a lot of our lives wasting time, worrying about how we looked.
Right. That's the thing. And a lot of the people in the show rings, especially, there's a lot of kind of fat shaming in the show ring. I think I pushed that out on a social media. It's like there was an article, and I can't remember who ran it, but you could Google it if you find fat shaming in the show ring. It's the title of it. But it's just, people are so hard on each other and so hard on themselves. And you're right. It's a huge waste of time, And I think the world is becoming a little kinder, but it's still,
Yeah,
it's just such a personal journey, And I think for people to judge other people is that's counterproductive.
Right, and it's also dangerous with the different eating disorders and
absolutely,
that I have been actually around for hundreds of years, and it's now coming to light, and it's affecting men as well, which is very sad, younger men. And I think it's time to, I really hope, and your book will help this, that people start thinking about this in a more healthy way.
Yes, that's my hope, and I related to it just enough to really be able to dig into it, and that's a blessing. I've spent a lot of time worrying about my weight, and there's really, I'm not perfect, but I've got several extra pounds I could do without. But it's not. It's funny how your mind plays tricks on you, and so taking that out into the different people and areas that I talk to people in, it's pretty pervasive. And it's just such a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, your writing is going to help, I hope.
I hope so too.
Yes. And so with your blog, you're continuing. What about Facebook? Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook. It's Melinda Folse Writer. I've got 2 Facebook pages, but this one, the one I've got now, has all of my books on it. So I'm on Twitter, pretty active on Twitter. And in fact, I think that's how we met. And let's see. I've got Instagram going, and I'm trying to get up to speed with that. This is
you and the rest of the boomer group.
It's a journey, you know. But Instagram, I think the younger ones are really, and even some of the older ones are starting to enjoy Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to stay active on those things and blog and on my website, and so. Well,
that's great, and you're going to you have conversations with your Facebook fans.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's really important because, again, you can speak to your readers and, share your information that way. And also it gives you an idea of what maybe your next book will be.
Yes, that's true. And really there are a lot of wonderful groups on Facebook that are very supportive of one another, and some of them are closed and some of them aren't. And it's been interesting to see, people can be pretty mean on the internet, but they can also be wonderfully supportive. And so I always encourage people to find those communities, because that helps keep you going, to know that there's other people out there that are kind of on the same path, and you can share ideas and inspirations and successes and commiserate and all of that. It's just it's a lovely tool.
Mm-hmm. And especially if you are sharing the love of horses, again, trying to stay as positive as possible and understand that people make mistakes and give them another chance. I think that's what our world needs. Definitely horses.
Absolutely.
Horses are communicating that.
They are.
Yeah.
And like you said, the horses read you and they know who you are.
That's right.
So,
they know all about you, right?
They force that authenticity that a lot of people, it's funny. It's kind of a shortcut, I think, having a horse, because they call you right immediately. You can't get away with anything.
That's right.
So.
You know. Well, I hope that the younger people coming up have a chance to interact with horses in their future and not have to deal with some of the baggage that, we had to.
Yes, I hope so too. And I think the world is headed that way. The world of riding is in some of the judges and that I've talked to, that they've changed a little bit. And one of the stories that was really inspiring, a lady told me that, when she entered a ring, she's a very, very good rider, but as life and years had put some pounds on her, and she was much larger than she wanted to be or had ever been, but she was still an extremely good rider. And she said that the judge, she won her class, and I think it was a dressage class, I'm not sure, but the judge came up to her afterwards and says, when you first entered the ring, I didn't give you a second look because of your size, but I couldn't help but watch, as I watched you ride and I watched you, how you connected you were with your horse and how beautifully y'all moved together, suddenly I couldn't see that anymore. And I was able to judge you, your ride fairly. And even so, the judge had this light bulb moment. So I thought that was,
encouraging.
Pretty neat. Yeah, very encouraging, because I hope that more of the judges kind of maybe lean that way and judge the rider and the horse on their own merits and not so much on the superficial stuff.
Right.
But on the other side, the rider, the rider's obligation is to be in shape and to be that connected to their horse. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Even if they're not riding, they're just connecting with the horse on the ground, if they don't think that they can do that. And never to give it up, or at least,
right.
I think that would be a shame.
Yes, it's just so much to be gained from the experience, any experience you have with horses. We had a couple of retreats after the first book, and I may be looking into doing some of those for women and just groundwork only, but it's amazing how the connections that take place with people who don't consider themselves horse people, but they come away from that going, oh, I get it now. I see why you like horses so much. They're, it's such an experience of looking at yourself. And we did some journaling where the people just sat beside the horse and journaled.
Ooh.
And, these insights would come to them. And a couple of them came back to me 6 months, a year later and said, that day in the horse pen when I was writing, whatever I was writing about, and I had some thoughts I'd not had before, and I took action. And that horse, was just right there with me the whole time. And, it really changed my life. It changed my thinking. Something different happened. They did something different. So, I love those stories from the retreats. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, it's hard to get people to come to them because they don't know what it is. But once they do it, they see what it's about, and they really appreciate the opportunity. But anyway, we may be doing some more of that.
I think that's awesome. Can you talk about your retreats and how people can connect with that?
Well, right now we don't have any scheduled. The last one we did was called Dust Off Your Dreams. And of course, that was kind of our theme with the midlife. And I think that website is still up. The information's old, and we haven't done another one. But we may do another one at the same location. We did it at the Wildcatter Ranch in Graham, Texas, which is an hour and a half or so from Fort Worth. And it was a beautiful venue to have a retreat like this. And so it's a Dust Off Your Dreams Retreats with an S.
Okay, so that's the title of if you have future retreats, that's people could Google that and find what's happening next? Yes, I think so,
because if I do something with a different name, say around body image or mindfulness or whatever, I think maybe I'll have connections between the two sites. So if you go to that, I know that one exists, and I'm still just kind of, the person that did the retreats with me is interested in looking at it again. So that may be on the horizon for us. But
I think that's great.
It's fun.
Yeah. And I think you should. I think you should pursue that.
Right.
I think that would be wonderful. I do believe that people, not just women, need this.
Yes, and sometimes they don't know they need it until they do it, and that's the trick.
That's
get them
right.
there and have them see what it is, and then they go, "Wow, that was wonderful. I needed that." So that's
now. Yeah, that's great. Now, Melinda, tell us how people can reach you. Talk about your URL for your website, your Facebook, and all the different ways people can get in contact with you.
Well, my website is melindafolse.com. Just all one word.
Spell your last name.
FOLS as in Sam, E, Melinda Folse. And .com, and on my website is all the connections for Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, I believe, and you can sign up for a email list that I'm building right now to start, because some of these blogs that I'm writing, I'm thinking, I can probably start sending out maybe a newsletter with some of this material from time to time. So I'm gathering emails, and so if I can notify people who might be interested in a retreat, if we get one together, we'll be hitting that email list, and it'll be on the website also. And the Twitter, it's Melinda. I think all of it's just Melinda Folse. If you search Melinda Folse on Twitter or Melinda Folse on Facebook. Yep, and Instagram also. I think Melinda Folse writer.
Sounds great. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. And your books are on Amazon.com, and they're also on your website, correct?
Yes, they are.
That's great. All right. Well, then we'll say goodbye, Melinda.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. Enjoyed talking with you.
All right, then. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed my interview today with Melinda Folse, author. Now a quick word from Natural Alternative Grazers.
Natural Alternative Grazers makes a slow feeder hay net for every grazing animal. Our mission is for animals to have access to hay at all times, as if they were grazing naturally. This helps prevent digestive issues, colic, ulcers, stall vices, cribbing, inhalant allergies, and boredom. Save hay, time, and money with the Natural Alternative Grazer.
If you would like to be a guest on Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show, just go to the website and fill out the form. This is Paula Slater